right, Bridget, you ready to go? Okay.
All right, so I will now call to order this regular meeting of the Jersey City Historic Preservation Commission. It's Monday, May 13th, 2024, at approximately 6:34 p.m.
Please be advised that in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, the notice of the time, date, and place of this regularly scheduled meeting of the Jersey City Historic Preservation Commission has been sent to the Jersey Journal, the Jersey City Reporter, and Ellis Basilito on Tuesday, May 7th. Same notice has been sent to the clerk's office for posting on the bulletin board outside of City Hall and on the Jersey City website. I have proof of this notice here in evidence, if we could mark them. That will be B1 for tonight's. All right, and we'll do a roll call attendance. Commissioner Amatuzzo?
Here.
Commissioner Gunther?
Here.
Commissioner Sakong?
Here.
Commissioner Blazak?
Here.
Commissioner Cronin?
Here.
Okay, Commissioner Garriga is absent, Commissioner Sandcamp is absent, Vice Chair Gucciardo is absent, and Chairman Gordon.
Present.
Okay, there are 6 members of the commission in attendance. 5 affirmative votes are needed for the approval of a certificate of appropriateness. All right, moving on down the agenda, we have the minutes from March 11th. Anyone have any questions, changes, corrections? Okay, hearing none, staff recommends a motion to approve.
I'll make a
Motion.
Second.
Okay,
Yeah,
yes.
thanks.
All right, do a roll call vote. Commissioner Gunther?
Abstain.
Okay, Commissioner Sakong?
I'm going to abstain as well.
Okay, Commissioner Blazak?
Aye.
Commissioner Cronin?
Aye.
Commissioner Amatuzzo?
Aye.
All right, Commissioner Garriga is absent, Commissioner Sandcamp is absent, Vice Chair Gucciardo is absent, Chairman Gordon.
Aye.
Okay, there are 4 votes in favor, none against, with 2 abstentions. The minutes from March 11th are approved. Next, we have the March 26th special meeting minutes. Anyone have any changes, corrections? Okay, hearing none, staff recommends a motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Second.
Okay, Paul, and then I have Dan. All right, roll call for this. Commissioner Sakong?
Abstain.
Commissioner Blazak?
Aye.
Commissioner Cronin?
Aye.
Commissioner Amatuzzo?
Aye.
Commissioner Gunther?
Aye.
Okay, Commissioner Garriga is absent, Commissioner Sandcamp is absent, Vice Chair Gucciardo is absent, and Chairman Gordon.
Aye.
Okay, there are 5 votes in favor, none against, with 1 abstention. The minutes from March 26th are approved. All right, next item is correspondence. All correspondence application materials are linked on the agenda, which can be accessed by scanning that QR code. For announcements, we do have 2 announcements this evening. The first is that case 11A, the demolition review for 17 Van Ripen, has requested to carry to the June 17th HPC meeting. So that's our regular June meeting. And then the second announcement is that Commissioner Lewis has chosen to resign from the HPC. Very bummed to hear that, obviously, but we do thank her for the 4 years that she spent on the commission with us. All right. Next is open public comment. If there are any members of the public in attendance who would like to speak regarding on matters regarding historic preservation that are not on tonight's agenda, you can use the I was about to go for Zoom there and say raise hand function at the bottom of the screen. You can approach the public comment mic. And staff sees no members of the public, so I recommend a motion to open and close public comments.
I'll make a motion to open and close public comment.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, we have no old business on tonight's agenda, so we can call the first case for new business.
I will call case H24-79. The applicant is James Burke Esquire on behalf of Patricia and Cor Raffos, owners. The address is 77 Grand Street in the Paulus Hook Historic District. This application is for a certificate of appropriateness for a proposed subdivision of Lot 3 into 2 lots, 3.01, which would be 77-79 Grand Street, and 3.02, which is 82 Sussex Street. This is a recommendation to the Jersey City Planning Board.
Oh, do you mind just tapping the mic on? Or, no, sorry, at the bottom where it says like the push, you just tap it. Yeah, sorry. Did it turn green? All right, if it's green, you're good. Michael's going to come down and look. That might be why the public comment mic was there.
Oh, there it is, there it is.
Oh, there we
Okay,
go.
I got it.
Sorry
Okay,
about
so
that.
I'll just start again. Jim Burke, representing the applicant. I just want to emphasize, my surveyor is here and he'll walk through this, but nothing's being proposed other than the creation of the lot. So whoever buys this lot, obviously will come back to this board and make a presentation on what will go on the lot. But my clients own this property for a long time. It's an L-shaped lot, and they decided to just create this two-lot subdivision and sell off one of the lot so they can actually stay in their home and live there for a lot longer. Okay, so I'm going to bring up Joe Caulfield as our surveyor, and he'll just give you 2 seconds of a description, and hopefully that will be enough, except for any questions you might have.
Good evening.
Raise your right hand, please, sir. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And if you could state and spell your full name for the record.
Joseph Caulfield, Caulfield. Dress? Okay. My name's Joe Caulfield. I'm a land surveyor. I'm the principal surveyor at Caulfield Associates LLP. We've been in the county since 1933. I was just figuring the math. We were asked to do a survey of this Lot 3 in preparation for a subdivision. So as what you see here is our subdivision plat. The site is located in the Paulus Hook Historic District, as you well know. It has a situation where along Grand Street we have 2 3-story and basement bricks, and on the Sussex Street it goes through into Sussex, and Sussex is a vacant lot. You can see the area calculations that we have on our plot. Together, Lot 3 as it stands now is 7,356.3 square feet. We're proposing breaking the lots, as you mentioned earlier, into one lot along Sussex Street, which is going to be 2,280 square feet. 2,000, yeah, let me say that again. I misspoke. 2,208 square feet, and that's along Sussex Street. The remainder will be along Grand Street, and that will be a lot of 5,148.3 square feet. Okay. It's pretty straightforward. Great neighborhood. As you can probably tell, if you're familiar with the Paulus Hook Historic District or the Paulus Hook area, it's a whole series of townhouses. As you can tell by our work, there is a hole in those series of townhouses. What we were able to, after speaking with the client and also going through the Paulus Hook Historic Preservation website information, and they have a great historical society there, it turns out that Colgate-Palmolive, which was in that area, we're all familiar with the Colgate sign, their headquarters, their national headquarters were here actually. They had gone through the process of buying individual lots in the Paulus Hook district up until probably into the 60s and 70s. If you don't mind, did we enter this as an exhibit?
It was submitted as application materials, yeah.
I'm going to turn to another map that I put together.
But this we do need to mark.
This will need to be marked. Exhibit A1, I assume?
A1.
A1.
Yeah.
A1 is a 1929 plat map. 513. Of the area, Paulus Hook area, you can tell. Morris, Sussex, Green, Grand. What we're concerned about are these areas right here. This lot here, 47 and 43, and a lot M. So that is...
M is in Mary?
M is in Mary. So the reason I put this map together for everyone to see was to see just how all this, with a whole series of townhouses along Sussex Street. What we're looking to do, what the client's looking to do is obviously Lot 3 looks like it was merged. It might have been by the tax assessor. I'm not sure what the historical reason was for why Lot 3 became a conglomeration of the Sussex and Grand Street pieces. In my experience, it's usually the tax assessor when they're doing a reassessment. If it's joint, if it's the same owner, they'll merge them. Doctrine of merger sometimes pops up. You'll see that in subdivision cases. So that's what I believe happened with Lot 3. But we were all individual lots, 2 along Grand Street, and we had the 1 along Sussex. As I mentioned before, Colgate-Palmolive owned a whole bunch of stuff. This was actually a big manufacturing plant back in 100 years ago. And they were looking to pick up different lots as they became available. And if, based on what testimony from the Paulus Hook Historic Group, some of the old-timers in the neighborhood said Colgate would buy it and pretty much demolish it within a day or two. And that seems to be what happened in this case. I think they were looking at some point to demolish a whole series, if you can imagine that. That entire, not that entire area, but a lot of it, and make that like a real national headquarters for them. Long story short,
They didn't.
they did not. Well, Colgate-Palmolive left.
Thank goodness.
I'm from Hoboken. We had Maxwell House Coffee down the street from me. They left too, so it's now a nice neighborhood. But I think it's a great idea that Historic weighs in on this, because we have the ability, or you have the ability, depending on what the next stage is and who, takes over site development of this, to bring it back to the original that we had back in the day. They're all, like this whole series along this block, they're all 10-foot setbacks from the street, pretty gardens in the front and so on. It's a real opportunity, I think, for Jersey City to bring back the character of that neighborhood.
And Joe,
maintain
Joe,
anybody-
this will be a conforming lot, right?
This is conforming,
Yeah.
'cause just based on the area calculations, you're looking at, in this area, 1,800 square feet is, I'm sorry,
Slow down a little, just.
so sorry.
What?
1,800 square feet would be
Just
the,
based on the,
the plat that I already provided, sorry. We have the area calculations. And we're required with 1,800 square feet for conforming in this historic district. We're looking at, for the Sussex piece, 2,200 square feet and some change. It's part, just as you look at our work as well, you'll see that the buildings on either side of the Sussex property are party wall buildings, so they'll be adjoining, and anybody developing that will have to obviously put that into their calculations in their design. But it seems pretty straightforward. It doesn't seem that there's any, again, this, as far as, we seem to be a conforming lot, we don't seem to have any major issues. One of them, or any major issues at all, the fact that it was just being subdivided as a vacant lot makes it a pretty easier here, because we don't need to go through any kind of development variances that may or may not be needed.
All right, thank you. I think that
That's-
covers it, yep. And I'll just,
Any questions?
I'll just add before we turn it back, the existing buildings are not being touched, all right? So I just want to put that on the record.
Okay. Are there any questions from any commissioners? Okay.
Just
Okay.
one. How wide is the lot on the Sussex side?
Sussex is going to be 22.08 feet,
Thank you.
22.08.
Okay. All right. And if that ends your testimony?
That concludes our presentation.
Great, thank you. All right, are there any members of the public who wish to speak regarding this application? All right, staff sees none and recommends a motion to open and close public comment.
I'll make a motion to open and close public comment for this item.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, we can move quickly into staff comments. If you have the staff report open, we're going to go right to section 5. As the applicant stated, this is as straightforward with the subdivision as you can get. We are getting 2 conforming lots out of it. Staff sees no adverse effect to the Paulus Hook Historic District. And we do recommend approval of this application and recommendation to the planning board. We do have 4 conditions for this. 3 of them are pretty standard, right? We have that we're not approving any work to the buildings or the site as part of the subdivision. It is strictly just a subdivision. If any element of the subdivision changes, they do need to come back and request a deviation. And then number 4 is also just that if there is a deviation, they need to come back. And the last condition is that the Sussex Street side does have a curb cut on it. It is expected that any future application will not have that curb cut on this, as we do not permit curb cuts and parking for buildings with less than 10 units. Okay. Any questions for staff?
No.
Okay. Are those conditions appropriate and acceptable?
We accept those conditions.
Great. With that, staff recommends a motion to approve the COA and recommendation to the planning board with conditions.
Right, I'll make a motion to approve this with the conditions as Maggie read and recommend it to the planning board. I also thank the applicant for a thorough presentation.
Seconded.
Okay. Do a roll call vote. Commissioner Blazek?
Aye.
Commissioner Cronin?
Aye.
Commissioner Amatuza?
Aye.
Commissioner Gunther?
Aye.
Commissioner Sakong?
Aye.
Okay, Commissioner Griega is absent. Commissioner Sandcamp is absent. Vice Chair Gutierrez is absent. Chairman Gordon.
Aye.
Right, there are 6 votes in favor, none against, with no abstentions. The COA and recommendation to the planning board is approved.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
Good night.
Have a good day.
I'll now call case H24-140. The applicant is Jennifer Bogdansky Esquire on behalf of Bellfuse Inc., owner. The address is 206 Van Voorst Street in the Paulus Hook Historic District / Tidewater Basin Redevelopment Plan. This application is for a certificate of appropriateness for a proposed subdivision of Lot 30 into 7 lots, including 30.07, which is for the existing historic building, and then 30.01 through 30.06. This will be a recommendation to the Jersey City Planning Board.
Just give me a second. It has to pop up on my end. All right, Chuck, you're good. You guys, and Rich, you guys are good to go.
Okay, thank you. For the record, Charles Harrington of Connell Foley on behalf of the applicant. Similar to the last application before this commission, this is for a subdivision in the Paul's Hook Historic District. Again, it is only the subdivision that's being presented tonight. It's a little unique, and we're going to walk you through that after I give you a little bit of a summary. But the property right now is a single lot. It's about, I think it's 15,000 square feet. The old Bellfuse building sits on it. I don't know if you're familiar with it at 206 Van Voorst. So there's that building, and then directly to the south, there's a parking lot that is used in conjunction with that building now. This is again, it's somewhat unique in that the property sits in the Tidewater Basin redevelopment plan area, and then a portion of the Paulus Hook Historic District kind of cuts right through the Bellfuse building. We'd looked at that a number of times to see whether or not that was a drafting error on the map. Obviously, the Bellfuse building has historic properties and resources, but it was like, where is this boundary? Why would you draw it in between, in the middle of the building, right? But that being said, this subdivision does affect the Bellfuse building, because what we're proposing to do is to carve out the Bellfuse building as a single lot. That'll be a little under 7,000 square feet. So that'll be a existing standalone lot for the building. And then to the south on the parking lot, we're looking to break that into 6 lots. And of those, 5 of those would be developed with townhouses, which would be 2 to 3 units in each townhouse, which is permitted in the Tidewater Basin redevelopment plan. And all of the parking lot area actually sits outside the Paulus Hook Historic District. So that is governed by the Tidewater Basin redevelopment plan. So the idea is to, there's no work proposed on the Bellfuse building as part of the subdivision or as part of the site plan that's pending before the planning board division. That is all about the new townhouses that we would be proposing. That is, we're going to walk you through that. We note that the lots that we are proposing on the parking lot area are all undersized according to the Tidewater Basin redevelopment plan. But I note that they're all exceed or meet the minimum width and exceed your standard width lot in historic districts, which is 18 by 100. So you have the 18-foot width. So we're proposing 5 of the 6 lots, I believe, are 20 feet wide, and a corner lot is 25 feet wide. So it's really a matter of the depth that creates the undersized lot condition. And that's because that's where the Bellevue's building starts as well. So you can't make them any deeper because of the existing condition. So with that being said, I have Richard Garber is our architect. He's just going to walk you through. I think this helps explain it, the visuals, as to what we're proposing.
Great, thank you, Mr.
Can you
Harrington.
raise your right hand to be sworn? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
And then just state your name.
It's Richard Garber, Garber. Great. Hello, Board. Thank you for having us tonight. It's nice to be back in quarters. Briefly, as Mr. Harrington suggested, there is, I'm not quite sure if I would call it an error, but there's an inconsistency in the historic overlay here, which is the thicker brown line, which you can see here cuts right through our site, which is wholly bound by otherwise the Tidewater Basin redevelopment plan. The Bellevue's building is certainly a building with historic kind of street front, and I've lived a block away from this building for over 20 years at this point. You can see here the aerial view and the proposed subdivision drawn in red. Now I'll show a survey here, but the idea is that the Bellevue's building is wholly kept as the asset, and it's adaptively reused with permitted uses, by the way. And then there is a subdivision of 6 lots that per Tidewater are 20 feet wide, except for the corner lot, which is 25 feet wide. Now, the depth that Mr. Harrington spoke about is largely a function of where that building exists as an existing condition. You see that here in Tidewater. This is the historic buffer district in Tidewater. And then we have some photos of the building. You probably know this building. It's a very handsome, some have said it's a firehouse, had been a firehouse. Some had said stables. I think it might have been even both. But you see that the building was basically modified a little bit in 1998. We have the sort of drawings of that and so forth. I should also say that the Bellevue's was a client of ours prior to the current owner here as well. So we've lived with this building not only as neighbors, but architecturally for some time. This is the side yard. And so the thing that I'd like you to take kind of quick note of here is, if I can get a mouse up here, a Siamese connection here that will have to be moved. And Ms. O'Neill and I have spoken about this. Our preference is to move that from the south lot, south-facing facade to the sidewalk. If we do have to put it on the facade of the building, we will work that out with staff.
And just for the record, that was subject of a certificate of no effect that was filed with Maggie, and that's referenced in the report.
This is the existing condition survey. You see the lots to be subdivided are largely a parking lot. You see the Bellevue's building, as we call it, which is the gray entity here. And then the proposed subdivision is as such. And as Mr. Harrington said, all of the interior lots are 20 feet wide. The corner lot is 25 feet wide as required by Tidewater. And then we have a little bit of a varying depth, but that depth is somewhere around 65 feet. Gets a little tighter on the corner. And then just to take you through some key points briefly, this is meant to be subdivided from lot 30 to lots 30.01 to 30.07. The lot area as an existing condition is 15,000 feet. The total building area that will be left at Bellevue's is 6925, which is the existing condition, as is its configuration of 2 stories and 27 feet 2 inches. As I mentioned, that existing structure will be adaptively reused, and then a very modest portion of the overhanging cornice on Bellevue's will be cut back, basically demolished, and that was also in your staff report that you saw. And there will be some looking at some window openings to make sure that we are complying with code. And other than that, I mean, I can just show very quickly like what the site plan looks like. There are some townhomes planned here as well as a vacant lot with a playground. So you basically see the relationship here where what's in orange would be a kind of rear yard, so to speak, that would provide a little bit of a buffer between the existing Belfuse building and the townhouses. And I think that's pretty much all I have for this. I mean, I can get into more graphics, but I think it's fairly straightforward.
Yeah, that's really it. It's all about the subdivision tonight. And like I said, the townhouses are outside the district and part of the Tidewater Basin redevelopment plan. And the Belfuse building will, sit alone on its own lot.
What is the Belfuse building currently being used for?
It's vacant.
And you said it'll be adaptively reused for a permitted purpose. Would that be commercial or residential?
It'll be, currently, the plan is to make it a preschool, so more commercial use than a residential use. Both are considered by the plan.
Yeah, I will just note, for whatever goes on in the Belfast, they will have to file an application with HPC, right? This is, once again, just a subdivision application.
I understand. I'm asking because, well, I'll get there. But so I know that we're only looking at the subdivision, but you're currently contemplating townhouses. And did you say there would be 3 family homes? Most likely?
I think it's 2 family homes that we're proposing.
And how many? Oh, go ahead.
No, that's
How many parking spaces are there
there's-
currently?
There's no parking proposed.
No, I mean in the existing parking lot. How many spaces is that?
About 22, I think.
Okay, I am just a little concerned, not so much from a historic preservation perspective, but frankly, as a resident in the area, that we're looking at adding 10 to 12 homes and taking away 22 parking spaces.
Also, sir, you have to remember that right now, this is a totally underused asset. No, this is not public parking. This is gated parking, and it was never public parking, right? This was only for when Belfuse had the fortune of hosting its world headquarters or whatever it was called in Jersey City. Its employees would park there. The Tidewater redevelopment plan, which again is a little bit beyond what we're here to talk about, allows for townhouse development at a density that is less than the R1 standards and doesn't require parking.
And I know too, I mean, if you live in a neighborhood, you're probably well aware too, across the street has parking within the building, which I believe is open to the public as well, not specifically just for their residents.
That's right.
But it's not, it would not be required on these sites.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Do you know if was the parking lot added when you said some of the changes were made to the building in the 90s, late 90s?
There were changes made to the building in 1998 that included an elevator, that included some structural steel, because they had always contemplated an addition to this building, actually. The parking lot always existed there. I would say it was more codified in 1998. So the striping that you see now has carried for these 25, 26 years, something like that. But it was always used as parking.
And was there an addition put on the building in the 90s as well? Is that also part of what?
The addition is the area that looks newish, I guess. I don't know if it's new or not, but the gray part of the building.
And that's so. And then if we look at the front facade, it's also presumably that's right section where there's a canopy.
This little vestibule. So you see here and this was in Ms. O'Neill's report, that this canopy actually projects beyond what would be the subdivision line. So that's simply being cut back. And then there's a lot line window that I just mentioned, as well as the relocation of that Siamese.
And so those windows, in their image on the right, those 4 windows would be blocked up, or would they remain?
In fact, I can show.
Sure.
So again, I'm not sure ever how far to get into this, but basically you could see here, this is really more for an application for the reuse of the building. But basically, because that gray portion of the building, which is new, is actually extended back, so that if you remember the site plan kind of jogs a little bit, that that also makes the depth of the parking lot the least deep at that point. So those windows would actually be removed. They're not needed. And also, there's a building code requirement that was not previously considered, I don't think, that basically allows for a kind of percentage opening on that facade that would require us to close a window. Now, I think that that's an easy choice, because if you actually look at the rhythm of the existing windows there, we actually have, if you look right past the gray on the, down here, that this is a double window here, whereas if you see the kind of cap on this side is a double and a single, this happens to be a quad and a double, with quads and doubles in the middle. So just moving this to a single seemed to be the best way to kind of make that code compliance, which is something we're gonna have to do anyway.
And one more question: the new lot that you're creating, that's just going to have the existing building on it, and maybe this is a question for staff or something for us to consider, but is that would then create a building with essentially 100% lot coverage on it, or excuse me, not a building, a lot with 100% lot coverage on it?
Yep.
So just, is there any concern with that? I mean, that may be something more for the planning board, but that we're creating a condition where there's a building that has full 100% lot coverage.
So from a staff perspective, I'm really not particularly concerned about that. It was already a non-conforming building. We already had no rear yard setback here. If anything, we are actually, by subdividing this, we are actually making its side yard setback much more conforming. By there not being one.
So believe it or not, Mr. Blazek, we are creating a little bit more pervious coverage.
Because you're moving the asphalt, then there's going to be
Because
a...
we're removing the asphalt, and there's going to be, as I showed in the site plan here, and this is not approved yet, but this has been, we've worked through this with staff, a small amount of drainage, of pervious area here, which would be a little rear yard. And then this whole lot at this point is slated for actually a playground. So there will be, pervious coverage there as well. I don't know that amount off the top of my head. But the idea is that seventh lot, and that I think that's lot 3001 in our subdivision, if I'm not mistaken, would be given to a kind of accessory use to the adaptively reused Belfuse building, and that it's a playground.
Yeah, and that was going to be, it's going to be something for use by perhaps the daycare or whatever use that this,
Correct.
the new, it's not going to be like a public park or playground. Okay, just
Yeah,
making it clear.
correct. It would be in connection with the daycare in the Belfuse building.
Okay.
And I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, but on this particular drawing, it looks like the playground only takes up a little more than half of that lot. Is that
Yeah, I mean,
Correct.
we haven't really laid the playground
Okay.
out yet, but, yeah, it wouldn't be, right. And there's some concern about just putting children close to the street. I mean, we haven't worked that out totally yet, but yeah, we're not gonna run that playground right up to the sidewalk.
But it's not a split lot. It's not like you're going to have another use
Right.
towards the front of it. That's just, the diagram for now because when we discussed internal fencing because you don't want the kids right next to the street.
Right, and I think the other thing that should be mentioned is, in its current configuration, there's an egress point, which you can see denoted in the blue dashed line. So that is going to be a second means of egress right to Morris Street from the Belfuse building itself. And so that's one of the other reasons at this point why that lot is, that lot will serve as both a kind of egress way from the existing building as well as a playground for the adaptive use.
That egress path is just on a permanent easement? Is that the idea?
That's right.
How wide is that easement?
I think it's 5 feet. It has to be a minimum of 3 feet, 8 inches. I think it's 5 feet is what we're asking for.
Yeah, I have 3.67.
Yeah.
Okay, so it is 3'8".
Yeah, there you go.
Are there any additional questions? Chuck and Rich, anything else to add?
No, that's all.
I think
All right.
It'll be a great addition to the neighborhood.
Great. there any members of the public present who would like to speak regarding this application? Please approach the public comment mic. Seeing none, staff recommends a motion to open and close. Public comment.
I'll make a motion to open and close public comment.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we'll move to staff comments. Give the staff report up. We're gonna go right to 5. So we addressed one of the concerns of this, which is that you are gonna have a full coverage lot with this subdivision.
Repeat, Maggie, and slow down a little, so.
I'm sorry, I know I'm talking really fast. The eye contact is working, I promise. We did address one concern of this application during commission comments, which is that you will be getting a full coverage lot here. The lot is, though, becoming slightly more conforming because the setback will be conforming. This building was never going to have a rear yard setback. And in my opinion, the thing that this subdivision does is it fixes one of the last remaining split zoned lots downtown. There's only one other one I can think of that is still split zone downtown. It objectively makes no sense to have a parking lot in a historic district, especially half of a parking lot in a historic district. So we are more than happy to see the Bellevue's building subdivided. The historic district boundary will stay exactly the same. We are subdividing it along that historic district boundary. And we really see no adverse effect to the historic district as a result of this application. As Chuck did and Rich mentioned, we did work with the applicant on a cone for this, for the work that they discussed, the relocation of that Siamese connection, the removal of the non-historic awning, and the covering of a couple windows in order to meet building code. So the conditions in this recommendation reflect that all of those conditions remain in effect for this approval. And then we have the other 3 conditions that we saw in the last subdivision application, right? That no work to any of the buildings is proposed as a result of the subdivision. And if anything on the subdivision changes, they need to request that as a deviation from us and possibly come back to the board. Are there any questions from any commissioners?
The only other question I had, and I think this was covered, that the lot is bisected by the district boundary. It wasn't clear to me, is that boundary the building? Or because on this map here, it looks like the boundary goes through the building.
It does. It's, I think it's just an error.
Yeah,
It's
Okay.
an alignment thing that has to just.
Okay, that's all I wanted to clarify. Was this building still like half in the district or something weird like that? Which
I think as a result of this, we're all in agreement that this building's in the district. What we're subdividing out is not in the district.
Yeah,
You
I
agree
think,
with that?
yeah, that's what happens as a result. You got half or full. It's like, you can't be almost pregnant. You're there. So,
Understanding that the gray bits of the building were part of that 90s
98.
98 addition, or renovation. The windows on the south, the windows within the existing brick fabric that face south, those don't appear to be historic. Can you speak to, since you're proposing to break up at least some of it, can you speak to when they're from?
They're not historic. They are inoperable aluminum frame windows painted in a green that basically matches some of the treatments that were done to the building in the late 90s and 98.
Were the masonry openings there before, or did they just punch new?
I believe that they were all there in this configuration, but I'm not totally.
So there were historic windows there, but the windows themselves are new within the.
The windows are definitely new. I'd have to confirm for you the actual openings.
Maggie, does
From
staff have-
from a file perspective, we have an application for changes to windows with exactly no information as to what those changes were.
Lovely.
Around the late 90s. It's like 98-ish.
well, even if there were window openings there, it looks like the whole facade. I mean, I don't think that's the original brick.
Yeah,
I think it looks very late 90s and then the pink.
my
pink
assumption.
Stone doesn't ring
No, it doesn't
19th
scream,
century to you?
My assumption is when they put that addition on in the front in 98, they redid that entire facade.
Yeah, that's what it looks like to me as well. Thank you.
Okay.
So I take Mr. Garber, your point that the parking lot is not open to the public, and Maggie, I take your point that a parking lot is disfavored in a historic district, but, the fact of the matter is people in historic districts do drive cars. We don't have stables in the area. We don't ride around on horseback. So it's a little disheartening to me that we're always adding development and adding to density while removing parking. That's kind of neither here nor there for these purposes. I understand that, but I just wanted to express that concern because I think it is a concern a lot of people who live in these districts have at the moment.
Noted. Thank you. All right. That being said, if there are no other questions for staff, the recommendation on this is to approve with conditions and recommend approval to the planning board.
Motion to approve with conditions outlined by staff.
Second.
Okay. Check and Rich, conditions appropriate, acceptable?
Yes, they would be.
Great. Thank you. We'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Amatuzzo?
Aye.
Commissioner Gunther?
Aye.
Commissioner Sakong?
Aye.
Commissioner Blazak?
Aye.
Commissioner Cronin?
Aye.
Commissioner Garriga is absent. Commissioner Sandcap is absent. Vice Chair Gucciardo is absent. Chairman Gordon?
Aye.
Right, there are 6 votes in favor, none against, and no abstentions. The COA and recommendation to the planning board is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a
Thanks,
good night.
guys.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
I will now call case H23-47. The applicant is Stephen Joseph Esquire on behalf of 88-90 Bright SPE LLC owner. The address is 88 Bright Street in the Van Voorst Park Historic District. This application is for a certificate of appropriateness for a proposed rear and 4th-story addition to an existing 3-story building, interior renovations, and front facade restoration at an altered contributing Italianate townhouse built circa 1890. This will be a recommendation to the Jersey City Planning Board.
Good evening, everybody. While Will's getting set up, we'll just go through some of the basics. I also want to let the board know the next application on the agenda, 90 Bright Street, directly next door to this, same applicant, same architect, different project, but same group. All right, so this is between Varick and Jersey. What we're proposing to do here is the 4th-story addition to the 3-story building. In order to accomplish this, we do need to get major site plan approval with variances from the planning board. We need rear yard setback, height, building coverage. This is also in a flood zone, which could help explain some of that. I think Will's ready to go.
I fixed it.
There we go. Wonderful. All right. So Will's our architect this evening. He'll walk you through the plans.
Okay, would
Thank
you
you.
raise your right hand and be sworn? Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
And if you could state and spell your name for the record.
Sure, it's William Weckenman, last name Weckenmann.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time this evening. These are 2 projects that we're very excited about and are happy to be here tonight to present them to you.
I'm sorry. Could I ask you to just make it full screen, the actual presentation for now?
Let me figure out how to do that. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
There we go. So, as Steve mentioned, the project is located at 88 Bright Street. The building is located on the north side of the block. We have 2 photographs for reference here. One is the 38 tax photo, and the other one is a photo of the current existing conditions. As Steve also mentioned, we are asking for 2 variances in conjunction with this project. One is for building coverage, which is sort of typical as the result of the discrepancy between the bulk standards for the historic zone and the building coverage requirements. The other is for rear yard setback, which I'll highlight here a little bit more closely. The drawing on the left here is the existing block plan. This is the project site here. It's 1 in from the corner. And what's unusual about this is that all of the lots within this block are 100 feet deep, with the exception of this lot, which is 90 feet deep. So you have the lot on York Street, which is 110 feet. The lot on Bright Street is 90 feet deep. So we are asking for a rear yard setback variance. We're proposing a 27-foot rear yard setback, which is proportional to the lot size. One other item worth pointing out is that if you take the rear yard setback from the predominant rear yard lot line, you actually have a deeper rear yard. So the distance from the predominant lot line down the center of the block is actually 37 feet, which, if this were a conforming lot, would be greater than the 30 feet required. My apologies, I never present this in this format, so I'm not quite sure how to go to the next slide. Nope, not working. Oh, there we go. So on this sheet, we have the existing and proposed site plan. The drawing on the left is the existing site plan. So we're maintaining the existing conditions along Bright Street. We're maintaining the front yard, the landscaped area in the front yard. We're maintaining the existing stoop. We are removing a portion of the rear yard, and then we're also removing all of the asphalt pavement in the rear yard. Currently, there's a large parking lot here that is shared with the neighbor at 90 Bright Street. So we will be removing all of this surface parking in the back here as part of the work. Another thing worth noting is that there is an access easement along the rear property line, which extends from the church property on Jersey Avenue. It extends through this property and then out to Bright Street along the neighbor at 90. Oops. So moving on to the proposed site plan, we are proposing our sort of standard site improvements, new sidewalk, new curbing. We're proposing a street tree for in front of the building. We're also proposing new landscaping of the front yard and a replacement of the historic fence that existed there at one point, but has since been, I guess it was removed before the current owner bought the property. So the building is a three-story building. We're proposing a rear yard addition as well as a fourth floor addition, which is set back from the front facade approximately 18 feet, which is indicated, it's hard to see here, but this lighter area in the front represents the third floor roof, and this darker area represents the fourth floor roof of the building. We are proposing several green roofs along with occupiable roof deck areas for the residents' use. We're also proposing glass sky doors for the roof, so that the building, there will be no bulkhead on this building. Moving back to the rear yard, we are proposing new landscaping for the rear yard, as well as a fence around the perimeter, and as well as a new stoop and small patio area for the ground floor apartment. This is just our standard site details, so I won't spend any time on this, but if there are any questions, I'm happy to go through it. So moving on, I'll just quickly go through the floor plans for the proposed building. We also have the existing floor plans here for comparison purposes. The existing building will be gutted and reconfigured as part of the project. We're also proposing that a portion of the rear facade be removed to accommodate the addition that we're proposing. So the basement level, there are 4 units in the building. Each unit is a two-bedroom apartment. The ground floor unit has a small entry vestibule, which is underneath the existing stoop, which will remain as is. There's a bedroom in the front of the apartment, bathrooms towards the center, as well as a second bedroom, and then a living space with a patio out to the rear yard. The first floor is a similar configuration. We're maintaining the existing stoop and entry vestibule, and we're constructing a new stair to access the upper floor apartments. This unit also is a two-bedroom, two-bath unit with a bedroom in the front, bathrooms in the center, and then living space towards the rear. This unit does have a small balcony as well. The third and fourth floor will house two duplex units. The first unit towards the front of the building has the bedrooms on the lower level and the living space up above on the fourth floor. The rear unit is the opposite. It has the living space on the third floor and the bedrooms on the fourth floor. As you can see here on the fourth floor plan, this is the setback that I discussed previously. We have a 10-foot setback for a green roof area, and I'm proposing a small roof deck for this unit directly off of the living space. The stairs continue up to the roof, and again, there's another roof deck for the front apartment as well as the roof deck for the rear apartment. And again, those are set back from the facade an additional 10 feet. Here we have the existing and proposed elevations. As I mentioned, we're going to be reconstructing the fence, the iron fence along the front of the property. We're going to be repointing and refurbishing all of the existing brownstone and the brick on the facade. All the windows will be replaced to match the historic photograph. We'll also be replacing the front entry doors and restoring the transom window above the door as well. We are planning to repair the cornice. And then above that, you can see the proposed fourth floor addition. Again, it's a little hard to see, but this is set back about 18 feet from the front facade. We're proposing large glass sliding doors and windows for the addition, as well as aluminum paneling as the primary facade material. We also have a glass railing for the roof deck above. That design is continued around the back of the building, where we're also using large windows and sliding patio doors on the lower levels. However, we are using a gray fiber cement panel as the material for the rear elevation. But the overall design and aesthetic is consistent with the front addition as well. Here we have the side elevation. This is the west elevation of the building. The east side is directly against the neighbor. So we just have the west elevation to present to you. We are proposing a few lot line windows for the bedrooms on this facade. And again, we're taking advantage of the fact that there's the access easement on the adjacent property to allow for these windows. And then our final drawing here is the building section of the existing and the proposed above with the sightline diagram. One of the unique things about Bright Street is that it is a wider street, so it results in a greater setback for that fourth floor addition, which will not be visible from the public right away. Here we have the proposed and the existing block elevation. you can see that the proposed elevation is sort of in keeping with the height and general bulk of the buildings along Bright Street. And I also have an additional exhibit, which I'll share at the end of the presentation, showing both of the two developments next to each other. And then finally, we have our material selections for the building, including specifications for the windows for the rear and the fourth floor addition, as well as the sky door on the roof and the railings along the perimeter. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
So it's the next application is for a neighboring building. So those windows that are proposed on the lot line, will those be in a light well then?
Yeah, and they'll be coordinated with the building next door.
Okay. And I believe you said on the top of the building, there's a glass rail, but there's also a roof or a deck at the lower level. Is it a similar glass rail? How is that
Yeah, let me go back to
blocked
the
off?
Just zoom in on the section. So for the third floor roof deck, we're utilizing the parapet as the railing for the deck. We do have a divider, which will just be a basic metal railing, but that'll be well below the top of the parapet. And then for the roof, we set the railing back from the edge of the roof. So again, it would be not visible from the public right away.
Very good. And could you please show us the detail for the proposed door and explain the choice there?
Sure. Actually zoom in on the
Not the sky door, the front. There's a change proposed, I believe,
sure.
to the
apologies.
main door. But I do appreciate the sky door. Thank you.
Sure. So again, we're matching the tax photo, which originally had a double entry door. We're matching the same style and proportion of the photograph with the divided lights. There is currently all of the trim around the opening is original, so we're going to be keeping all of that trim and replacing the transom glass as well.
Very good. Thank you.
And you're sure it was originally a 7-foot door? The transom size looks like it hasn't been altered.
Yeah, that was a question that we went through that with staff as well. That was one of the questions that came up, was whether or not we thought that was original. And you can kind of see here it appears to be proportional in this photograph, and I think that this trim, while again it's hard to see in the photograph, I believe to be original, as is the frame for the transom above, but they replaced it with something, an opaque piece of glass at some point.
And the set that was submitted with us, I don't know if the numbers are exactly the same, but it's A104. Excuse me. No, it is. Okay, oh, I'm looking at the wrong one. Sorry. Give me 1 second. It is. Yes, A104. And it's the proposed west elevation. Yeah, so it is the same. What I'm looking at in this is, so there's a 3'6" parapet at the top, and it says aluminum coping color to match stucco below. So is that a railing up there, or is it like an extended parapet?
It's just a parapet,
Okay.
but we do have, we put an aluminum cap on the parapet. It's sort of our standard detail.
Okay, so where's the glass railing then, or any of the railings? Is it just?
It's just on the front and the rear facade of the, let me go back to the,
So the sides are a parapet, and then the north and south elevations are railings? Is that how you're doing it?
Right.
Okay.
yeah, so we extend the parapet around the sides in the rear, and then we just have the glass sort of as the center portion. And then it's a similar detail, although it's a little bit more, the glass is a little bit more expansive on the front facade, but the parapet continues along the sides, and then the glass is provided in the center.
And is there a reason you went with that instead of just a railing around the entirety of the top floor?
It was just, we had so many conversations about the railings and the specifics. I can't recall specifically. But I think it was, Steve, you may have some insight on this.
People feel uncomfortable with railings on the side.
I'm sorry, were you asking about the side or the?
Yeah, I just in general, I think one of the things that having a railing instead of a parapet was that it would cut down on the apparent mass of the addition. I don't know if is this going to be visible from anywhere on either side. I still think it's, from other portions of the lot, still help cut down on the apparent mass of it by not having a parapet with the same conditions as the addition below.
Sure, so on the, and it's hard to see in this, sorry, I misheard you, so I apologize. So the building on the corner is significantly taller than this building, and it's taller than the addition. So we have a parapet condition on that wall, because when you right up against the brick of the neighbor.
And Will, maybe if you could show the exhibit with the adjacent proposal as well. Yeah, I think the idea of the glass on the front and the rear is to minimize the impact of that upper story.
Yeah, so this is the combined elevations with the two projects. So again, this will be shorter than the neighbor. It'll be shorter than the adjacent building. So
Sorry to interrupt. Do we have to mark this?
yeah, we do.
Yes, we do. A1.
So I guess either way, it's going to be up against neighboring buildings on either side anyway, so it doesn't really matter, except at the front and the back where you have the glass.
Correct.
You stated that there's no visibility directly across the street. If 90 Bright were not to be built, would there be oblique visibility then of the addition?
Yes, there would be.
And if the commission feels more comfortable reserving voting on this until hearing the second presentation as well, we can certainly do that.
Are there any axonometric or render views of this?
No, not at this time.
Do you have an existing photo of the rear facade somewhere?
I think one was submitted with the application.
One, yeah.
I believe I have it.
Helpful if the agenda was up.
He's trying to pull it up.
Yeah, it's in the portal, and maybe you can. I'm looking at it now.
I need to borrow your dongles if I'm going to put this up.
This whole piece you need, Maggie?
Yeah. It only comes out as one piece. Although, the website loading would be helpful. Thank you. Never had these issues on Zoom. Did it go? All right. Be great. It's still loading.
Maybe in the meantime, you can ask a separate question. What's the plan for the painted brick on the front?
The idea is to remove the paint and repoint the brick as necessary.
Have you done any probes? Is there a sense of what condition those bricks are in and
We haven't done
grout
any,
colors? Like, is there a,
we haven't done any probes at this point in time, but the brick is in fairly decent shape. And I believe we've had conversations with staff on submitting samples of the grout and doing test probes as part of the future work.
thank you.
Photo of the rear facade is up. I didn't hear that. Photo of the rear facade is up.
Okay, thank you. And this just shows that, yeah, there's not, I was curious if there's any architectural features or anything. The only thing that I see is maybe original window trim, but I don't see anything that would be lost by removing this, essentially. Maybe that does get me to the rear facade, the proposed rear facade. The amount of glazing seems a little excessive to me. There just seems to be a large amount of glazing on this proposed rear facade, and I think it's pretty much the same at the new building next door. So I don't know if you have any other photos of any of the adjacent buildings, perhaps the ones that are the buildings that are the rear facades of the buildings on York Street within the block. But I think generally this block is more punched openings and masonry. Not that I think you would need to totally recreate that, but it seems just like a very large amount of glazing at the proposed rear facade.
Sorry.
And then in between, it's fiber cement cladding in between the floors and in between openings.
Yes, that's correct.
So while we're working on the technical issues, Maggie, do you have any concerns that because we can't count our chickens before they hatch, that there would be visibility if 90 Bright were not to be built?
Oh, no, that's a huge factor in this decision. Yeah. It's absolutely visible from the public right of way. It's a very, very large addition. It is what I like to call a Tetris edition. It looks like the upside down L in Tetris. Michael, if you want to maybe try the dock camera port. But yeah, visibility is a huge factor that the commission should be looking at here. It's
I
absolutely.
think that's why I would like to see this rendered or an axonometric drawings of it, because it just feels like, I don't know how much of this building is left once this addition is built. Is it just the facade? Because that's what it seems like, a facade and maybe a chimney.
Lot going on.
So I just don't have a sense of what this could really look like.
Yeah, I mean, we typically don't do renderings for historic applications, but I guess something we could consider.
I think that would be helpful.
Do we want to hear the presentation for 90 Bright Street?
Yes, I think we should.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. So, we don't typically do this. Do you want to call that application, Robert? And we'll take a pause on this. Just put it into the record that we're also going to hear the presentation for that.
Sure, if we don't need a motion.
Jonathan, do you think we need a motion to?
We don't typically ask for motions to call cases, right?
No, it was more take a motion to. I don't think.
We're going to call a case in the middle of hearing another case.
Yeah. That does seem interesting, but then you're not combining the cases, right?
No, just more putting it into the record that we're about to call the other case. So.
Yeah, I
Motion
think
couldn't hurt.
Okay. So why don't we make a motion to take a pause on 88 Bright Street to begin the presentation for 90 Bright Street?
Is that what the exact motion would be? Take a pause?
Okay.
This is
Call
the only time
timeout.
in my life that I'll remind everyone I didn't go to law school, so I don't actually know.
All right.
I only pretend like I'm an attorney.
A motion is just the will of the body, right? So if that's
Fair
what
enough.
we want to call it, then
Okay.
And do we have the applicant's consent to
of
that?
course, if it makes it easier, I'd like to request that we take a pause on 88 Bright Street, and you can move on to the next case while we're taking that pause.
Well, I motion that we take a pause on 88 Bright Street, and we're going to hear about 90 Bright Street, the next case, and then I guess we'll be voting on both.
Okay. Is anyone-
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
All right, Robert, go ahead and call the next case.
That being the case, I will call case H23-48. The applicant is still Stephen Joseph on behalf of 8890 Bright SPE LLC. This address is 90 Bright Street, and this is for a certificate of appropriateness for the construction of a 4-story, 4-unit residential building and associated site work. This is a recommendation of the Jersey City Zoning Board of Adjustment.
Thank you. All right, still Stephen Joseph for the applicant. This is a minor site plan with variances to the zoning board for height and coverage. Will's going to jump right into these plans.
Will you remain under oath?
Yes. Okay, so we're all very familiar with the location of this project. This is a little bit more of a straightforward application because it is for a new building on the vacant lot, as opposed to an addition, which we just talked about. So, again, I'll start with the block plan with the proposed and the existing. It's currently a vacant lot. It's a parking lot that serves the church on Jersey Avenue. And we are proposing a new 4-story building with a 30-foot rear yard on this property. We are seeking a building coverage variance, again, because of the discrepancy between the bulk standards and the building coverage requirement. And then we are also seeking a height variance for this application, and that is due to the flood zone. So there's both properties are located in the flood zone. So the first floor of this building is elevated up a couple of feet from the street level, and that results in some increased height with this building, so that all of the residential living space is 1 foot above the base flood elevation, which you'll see on the elevation drawings. Again, we have our site plan drawings here. Again, I'll just point out the location of this easement on the east side of the property. And what we're proposing for this property is, again, the standard site improvements. We are proposing new curb, new sidewalk, as well as a street tree. We will have a new stoop for this building in order to get access to the first floor, which is about 2 feet above street level. And then we're proposing a landscaped area in the front yard of the building. The building is sort of an H shape, like a flattened H, if you will. So we are providing a window well, a cutout on the east side of the property. The top floor units, again, this property has 2 duplex units on the 3rd and 4th floor, each of which have their own roof decks on the primary roof. We're also proposing a balcony for the 2nd floor. And then we are providing a new landscape rear yard with plantings along the rear property line. We are maintaining this access easement, egress easement. So we're providing a sidewalk that connects from 88 Bright Street and extends to the Bright Street public right-of-way. This dash line here in plan is the location of the 1st floor wall, so the building actually steps out as you go up. So we're providing a passageway through the building to maintain that egress easement. And you'll see it a little bit more clearly on the floor plans. Again, these are standard details. Happy to answer any questions on the specifications. So starting with the 1st floor, I'll just walk you quickly through the floor plans. We're proposing a new front entry stoop, as well as an entry vestibule on the 1st floor with a small building lobby. The 1st floor unit is a 2-bedroom, 2-bath unit, and it's configured with one of the bedrooms facing the street, the bathrooms in the 2nd bedroom at the center of the plan, and then a living space with access to the rear yard in the rear of the building. Moving up to the 2nd floor, the configuration is again similar. We have bedrooms towards the front, bathrooms in the center with the 2nd bedroom, and then living space towards the rear. This unit does have a small balcony as well. As I previously mentioned, the 3rd and 4th floor house 2 duplex units with the entrance on the 3rd floor. Both of these units have living space and a small powder room on the lower level, with the bedrooms and bathrooms on the 4th floor. These 2 units also have private roof decks with the required 10-foot buffer on the front, as well as a secondary buffer in the rear with some green roof space. We also have the mechanical space located at the center of the roof. And this project does have 2 stair bulkheads that access the roof decks from the 4th floor. The proposed elevation for Bright Street is fairly simple. It's a brick facade as the primary material with punched openings that match or similar to the proportions of the buildings found along the block. We are using a brick cornice here, which is inspired by some of the other historic buildings in this immediate vicinity. If you look at the building on the corner of Brighton, Jersey, as well as some of the other buildings, they all have these decorative masonry parapets, so that was the inspiration for this design here. The ground floor, we do have the main entry door, which is recessed slightly, and we're proposing a bluestone or stone cladding adjacent to that door with a small canopy. And that design is also reflected on the other side of the building, where we do have a gate to access the passageway to the rear yard that connects to 88 Bright Street. We also have a detail on the cornice, as well as the railing and the first floor canopy. Moving on to the rear elevation. You can see here, we're leaving an opening on the first floor to access the street. The primary facade material is glass, large glass windows with, again, a fiber cement spandrel material. And that design is carried up through all 4 floors of the building. Here we have the east side elevation, which is abuts 88 Bright Street, which is, you can see the outline of the building here. This does not reflect the proposed application, but everything in this drawing set is indicative of the existing conditions. Since these are sort of, the filing of these is a little bit weird. So, but I do want to point that out, that this is the outline of the building next door. Again, it's pretty straightforward. We're proposing a stucco for the primary facade material, and then we're extending the brick along the side elevation. And you can see here on the roof level is the location of the proposed bulkheads for the roof deck. This is the west side elevation. Again, fairly straightforward. This hatched area denotes the approximate outline of the building next door. Again, we're using stucco as the primary facade material. Let me just go back to I forgot to mention it. So the base flood elevation for this property is 11 feet. And the first floor is at 12 feet, which is 1 foot above the base flood elevation. So you can see here where the first floor is in relation to the street level, and also why we're pulling it up as opposed to having the entrance right at grade. Here we have our sightline diagram. Again, the bulkhead for the roof deck is set back, so where it won't be visible from the public right away. And we are also using the parapet as the railing or enclosure around the top floor roof deck. And then here, again, we have the proposed and the existing street frontage diagram. So you can see how the proposed building fits into the existing streetscape. Another thing worth noting is that we are matching the height of the adjoining neighbor. So we're sort of continuing that that elevation across with this property. So again, even though we are asking for the height variance here, it is in keeping with the massing of the building next door. And then finally, we have our material selections. We're using an orange-red iron spot brick as the primary facade material, with the bluestone accents on the front facade. And then again, large windows, as well as fiber cement panels for the rear facade.
And Will, if you could bring up that the exhibit from the last application, I'd like to enter that on this one too. So 8-1 elevation showing the proposed block plan for 88 ends 90 Bright Street together.
Yeah. Again, you can see here the parapet line, the roof line is sort of consistent with the adjacent buildings on the block. So with that, that concludes my presentation on this project.
Thank you. The first thing I wanted to ask about was the cornice. I think the brick cornice is an interesting idea. It just seems, especially when I'm looking in section on A102, it's because, and I think you would need, I think you're only going to need to show us the examples of the brick cornices that are on the block and, within the area. The cornice, all the cornices project a lot more than what you're showing. I think it's a good idea, but I think it's a little underdeveloped at this time.
Yeah, I think one of the things I'll say on that is, this is a detail that we've used on other projects in the past, and particularly on south-facing elevations, even a minimal amount of variation between the depth of the brick creates a shadow line. So I think one of the things we would do is do sort of a mock-up of this section of the facade so we could see what it looks like once we get into construction. But we do feel that between the undulating depth and then the changing of the rhythm of the brick coursing, it would be sufficient to be noticeable.
But to go back to Commissioner Gunther's point, I think having a rendering that proved that out, and seeing the effect of that shadow from the point of view of the street would have been helpful, especially in the absence of even rendered elevations. Typically, for new construction, especially, I think we're used to seeing a little bit more, a little bit more on the representation side.
Sure.
And you don't have a full building section, do you?
We do. It's combined with the sightline diagram.
Okay. Well, I think one of the things we need is just a facade section. I know you have some of it sprinkled, like the cornice, and then on A105 there's a window section. But one of the things you want to see is, the depth of the sills, the exact setback of the windows, and how that all plays together. So I think that's something that we really need, and I would need before I kind of take a vote on this. The other thing is the thing that projects most from the building is the canopy at the first floor, which is something that I think it's kind of an odd condition to have that type of a canopy projecting in new construction in the historic district. And then on the A102 again, it talks about thin brick veneer to match the primary facade. Is that just on the side facade, or is that
Just on the side.
just on the side facade?
Yeah.
Okay. And again, I still think. Oh, and why is there just balconies at the second floor? I'm actually okay with that. I think less balconies in historic district the better, but I'm just curious as to why.
It's just because the upper floor units have access to the top roof deck, so
Okay.
it's sort of a redundant.
Okay, that makes sense. I still think metal railings are preferable to glass. In the historic district, it's the normal vernacular, more like fire escapes, and just something that's more typical that we see. As well as, again, the amount of glazing, I think, might be a little excessive here at the rear facade. But I think generally the size and placement of openings at the front facade generally seem appropriate. And then so that's just and then on for where the easement is, that's just a metal gate that's going to be open, or the area that is going to be open and people are going to be able to walk in and out.
It's just
It's for emergency egress only, so it's required for
fire egress, code egress from the church.
So that people are just gonna be able to leave and not come in that way then?
Correct. It'll be like a one-way gate, and it's for emergency access only. So it's not, people can't just use that as an exit. Emergency only.
Okay. Just want to see if I had any other comments. Okay, I could defer to any other questions or commissioners.
I have a follow-up on the building section. Just the sort of shape and height of the bulkhead, is that as minimized as possible? Because I'm also looking at the profile, and I'm wondering if the floor-to-ceiling height could be reduced there, or the profile could be lessened, because I do have some concern without having rendered views. If 88, for example, isn't built upon, what could be visible for the bulkhead, because it's quite tall.
I think that's a good point. And I think it's sort of a representation issue with where the section's cut. But I do think that we would consider a sloped roof here, if that's preferable.
Sorry, we would consider a what?
Sloped roof over the stair bulkhead, if that's preferable.
I just think that that's something to look at, because it just seems quite tall and boxy, and it's not necessary if it's just access to the roof. And then, I agree with Commissioner Blazak that there's a good solid to void ratio on the front facade, and I have the similar concerns about the detail on the cornice, because I don't know that we can really see how that's going to look, especially relative to these other cornices that are adjacent. I slightly disagree about the amount of glazing on the rear. I think this is a new building, and maybe it can withstand a little more in a way that 88 cannot. But overall, I think this is generally something I might be able to support.
Just one question on the solid to void ratio on the front, which I agree with my fellow commissioners. I think it's an elegant and appropriate seeming facade. The only thing that I'm puzzled by is the change in floor to floors between the lower two floors and the upper two floors. And because that change, I think it's 8 inches or so, because it's absorbed by the brick area as opposed to the glass, it has the effect of looking squished
Sure.
between the second and third floor. I was just curious why that shift.
Yeah, it was just a function of the varying floor to floor heights. But that's a good point. And I think we could pick it up with the windows to minimize the.
I think that might make it a
Proportional
little
shift.
bit more elegant, and keep having the brick banding be consistent. In to my eye, to my subjective eye, I think that would feel better. But I do want to just reemphasize sort of that front door kind of awning. I'm not convinced, but I'm not convinced. Right? I would just like to see what that does to it in 3 dimensions. The brick cornice, the color of the window frames, right? The jambs, the color of the steps, the railing. I think there needs to be, I think, a rendered view and a 3-dimensional anticipation of what this is actually going to look like before I feel comfortable voting on it. On this particular application, the addition is a separate item.
Is the front door and there's a cast stone veneer there? Is that set back?
It is set back.
Okay, like that's something that's kind of hard to tell from the drawings. And I don't know, is there a section of that or like a close-up detail of that?
Or even a plan.
Yeah. Well, I guess, can you see it on the plan?
See.
Probably.
It should show up on the plan.
So it's a slight recess. So and you can kind of see it here in the section through the canopy.
And is the frame of the door, is that black aluminum and steel?
Yeah, it would match the adjacent windows.
Yeah, like here, I think we would better understand it, like if we had an elevation just of the door entry, to show us how that's gonna work.
Sure.
And like, what
Well,
are the side?
Sure.
I guess here there's brick on the side, but is that both sides?
So just to clarify, you're requesting an elevation of the side of the door?
I think we
or-
would just need an elevation, like a partial elevation that just like a close-up of the door and the entry there.
Okay. Would a 3D view, a rendering be preferred? I mean, if we're gonna be doing a rendering, we could do a
If
view
that
of the-
shows us what it's gonna look like. But I think you can work with staff on that.
You were talking a little earlier about the gate to the easement. So would that be outfitted with a panic bar then?
Yeah, some sort of an interior device that would allow for egress in the event that it needs to be utilized. But it wouldn't be open from the street side.
We had another application involving a panic bar recently, and one of the concerns the applicant had there was that with the slats or with the rails, someone could conceivably reach through and just push the panic bar. So they had put some sort of like almost a chicken wire or mesh to prevent that. I don't know if that's something that would be necessary here.
Sure. There's also like an egress device that could be placed on the side wall adjacent to the door, so it's not actually on the door itself. So
Maybe you could flesh that out as well.
And then at the roof, there's the open roof, and you talked about the green roof, some sort of setback that was required. Just can maybe talk about that a little bit more?
sure, the 10-foot setback from the primary facade to the occupied roof deck, that's the area where we're utilizing the green roof.
Okay, and so does the railing have to be at the setback? Or where's the railing here?
There's a railing
Right
at
there.
at the edge of the deck, but then again, the parapet is serving as the railing or the enclosure at the facade. So there's not a railing.
But there's
I'll-
a 42-inch
there's a-
parapet.
Correct.
And is that something that's required for new construction, or is that what is that? I guess I haven't heard that come up before, or haven't been paying attention.
The 10-foot setback,
Yeah.
the 10-foot setback has been in supplementary zoning for roof decks for historic districts since 2018. So every roof deck in a historic district that we see, or that you guys have seen since then, with the exception of one, which was 11 Erie Street, has all been set back 10 feet from the front facade.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Are there any additional questions?
I
from
have one question in regards to the entrance door. How wide is the door to the new building?
3 feet.
3 feet. I was just wondering, because so many of the buildings on the block have double doors, why you chose a single door.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's just a little bit more functional as compared to the double doors, and since we're not trying to necessarily replicate the historic entryway here, we decided to go with the single swing door.
And my other question is, are the windows on the front facade operational, or are they all just sealed? Do any of them open?
Yeah, all
The
the
bottom
windows
panels?
are operable. The lower panels are fixed, but the upper section is a casement window or swing window.
Okay.
Can you zoom into that facade a little bit?
Which area specifically?
Just into any typical window. Wouldn't the operable window have an additional frame that the fixed window would not have?
Typically, yes, but these are going to be typically yes, but not in this case. So these are
So there's
windows that-
is there a false set of metal frame for the fixed lights?
It's just a consistent, this particular manufacturer, the casement window and the awning window, or the transom or the fixed panel, the design is consistent.
I see.
So, and that's to maintain that, so you don't have that condition where there's like a
Fat line and a
discrepancy
thin
in it,
line.
yeah.
Can you go back? I'm sorry, you showed it already, but can you go to that window section again, just so?
So this is W1 is the.
Thank you.
Are these outswing casements or in-swing?
These will be in swing.
And what's the dimension of this cast stone sill? Both the projection and the vertical height?
It's 4-inch, 4-inch depth, or maybe it's, I'm sorry, I think it's a 5 by 5. It's the total dimension of the brick, of the sill.
I just want to go back to the question about the casement swing, because looking at this section, the screen appears to be on the interior, which suggests this is an outswing casement.
This is detailed as an outswing casement, but I think that
Okay.
since this was submitted, we changed it to a European style in swing. So I mean, we can update that detail as well.
Okay.
So, I don't know if there's any other comments, but I think, I think the feedback here is that you're probably heading in the right direction, but, I definitely want to see some more details and some different views and renderings before making a final vote on this. If everyone else agrees, or...
Does that carry over to 88 as well?
Maybe did we ever really have the discussion on that?
No, we
yeah,
just jumped
maybe
into
we
this
should
there.
go back just to give some comments on that too.
Unpause.
So maybe
So why don't we finish up 90 and
Yeah.
Okay.
carry it so we don't have to come back
Yeah.
back again.
I
And
think that's a
Maggie, if
good
you
idea.
don't mind, what's the next HPC?
Next HPC is June 17th,
June 17th. Okay.
which is fine. We can do June 17th.
Okay. Wonderful. So
So I just want to, just a quick question, just to clarify what, we're happy to do a rendering of the facade from street level. So we can provide that easily. But there was some questions or comments on an axonometric sort of view of both projects. I'm just trying to figure out what would be the most helpful graphic to provide in order to get you guys what you need to.
I mean, given that these are two separate applications, I think we need to see the renderings for each as if the other were not built, and maybe one where they are both in the rendering, so we can really get a sense of what we're dealing with here to make these decisions.
Sure, but again, is would a street view suffice or something overhead? I just want to clarify what would be the most helpful.
I think an axon kind of implies like a bird's eye view, but I think we need both that to understand, where the bulkheads are, and I think we also need views from the public thoroughfare too.
Sure. My only hesitation with providing an overhead view is that, with the way that the bulkheads and the additions are designed, they wouldn't be visible from the public right away. So I feel like an axonometric view might be a little bit deceptive in terms of how the project's.
Yeah, I wasn't necessarily suggesting an axonometric in place of sort of a street level view, just there are no 3D renderings of either of these buildings, and it's making, I think, it very difficult for all of us to wrap our heads around what you're actually proposing.
I understand. I just wanted to be clear on
Yeah.
the.
No, I agree. I agree in the way that like an elevation drawing is very deceptive about how tall the upper floor will appear. With maybe the axonometric is not the way to go, but whatever number of views, I think you need to thoroughly describe this, especially from public thoroughfare. I'll leave that up to you.
And I, sorry, go ahead. I just say I think you need, like you talked about, other brick corbelled cornices in the immediate vicinity. I think you should give us photographs of them, and I still think you should maybe take a second look at the cornice that you're proposing and
Sure.
to probably give it some more depth and variation.
We'll prepare an exhibit.
Yeah, and there was one other thing I was going to say. That slipped my mind, sorry.
Oh,
I was going to say, Maggie, maybe you can provide him with other examples of new construction presentations that we've seen.
Yep.
So that he know, the level of with the renderings and detail. But I think things like a full building section would be very helpful.
Oh, also, you had said you had built cornices like this before. If you have as-built photographs, so we can see like how it's turned out, that'd be great.
Sure.
So I don't know what the different types of renderings are called, but I can tell you that, from what's been discussed and from what I think I would like to see, it would be helpful to have a rendering that's not just a straight on, full on view, maybe a 45-degree angle or something to that effect, just to get a sense of the effect of shadows and depth when it comes to the door, the sills, the brick cornice, all of that, so we could see how the shadows might give it a greater sense of depth in reality. That would be very helpful.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. And with that, staff would recommend a motion to carry, what is this case number? H-23-0048 to the next regularly scheduled meeting of the HPC.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. And let's go back over to 88.
Shouldn't be more than 5 to 10 minutes, I think.
Rock fast.
Well, actually, I was saying, I think I had already made some comments on this. So maybe I'll let another commissioner start.
I think we left off with the glazing at the rear when we paused.
Yeah, and I think this could probably apply to the other building as well, but photographs of the rear facades of other buildings on the block would help as well, just to understand the context.
I will be my characteristically unhelpful self here and just say for my personal taste, I don't mind the amount of glass on either the addition or the new. Sorry, while I'm at it, what I am concerned about though is the amount of glass on the front of the addition, in the case where the new building is not built, because even though it's clearly out of the view shed when you're directly perpendicular from the property, I do think with the empty lot, if that's never developed, that amount of light spillage, at night, might be problematic. So that's, for instance, because you have this odd condition of not having the building next door, a rendering from street view, again, as my fellow commissioner noted, showing what that would look like without the new building there would be helpful to me. So that's for me. I'm more concerned about the front facing glass than I am with the rear.
Sure. I do think that the glass is sort of on the front facade in particular is sort of a nice it's a nice feature that helps to further differentiate between the existing masonry facade and the new addition. So as a design element, we do like the glass, but it's something that we will indicate clearly on the rendering, so you can get a sense of what that looks like.
That's fair.
Is there a reason you can't do the sky door at the new building like this? So at this one, it has the sky door, and is there a reason you couldn't do that instead of a bulkhead on a new building?
With this building, a bulkhead is the preferred way to access the roof. It's much easier to get up and down, and it's the preferred method for accessing the roof. In this case, a bulkhead would be visible from the public right away, so in these instances, we use the sky door so that it's not visible. I mean, again, in theory, we could use the sky door on the property next door, but because of the location of the bulkheads, they're not visible. So, But I guess that's a conversation that we can have as to how we intend to proceed with that in light of looking at this without having the neighboring property.
There were also some questions about painting the facade. Or the removal of the paint from the facade. Do we want to see anything clarified with that?
If you can do a test and see if the paint can easily come off, it would be very good for us to know that. Or if you find out that it can't be removed.
Actually, this points to a larger thing, and Maggie or anybody else, if this is something more appropriate for executive session, shut me up. But in my mind, now that we're back in person, right, we're here now physically, I would like to start seeing like samples again, like metal samples, stone samples, grout samples, paint samples. So, and that's just a general comment. Like today is a good example. Even if we didn't have renderings, if I had physical, even if we didn't have renderings, had we physical samples, like that might have. I'm not saying it would have completely gotten me there, but it would have at least helped me visualize what this thing would be like. So, just regards to the paint thing, I think just if we can start now bringing back physical things, physical samples to these meetings, I think that would help me for sure.
Noted. That's totally my fault for what it's worth.
No. I'm still on Zoom.
Anyone else have any other direction and comments on this? Mostly just more information about visibility, how it will look. Okay.
I have one last question about 88. What color will you be? Did we discuss the color of the cornice and windows and trim on 88?
Sure, let me pull up the elevation just so I can. Yeah, so the cornice would be brown. We have the paint spec color here that we intend to use. Windows. Yeah, the windows would also be brown. So the cornice and all the windows and the wood trim would be brown. The brick obviously would be repointed. We can get you some more information on that. And I think we're also proposing to provide a new parging at the face of the stoop, so we can. Which would also be brown, but I think we can get you some more information on that if it's helpful.
Okay. I'm assuming because it's an Italianate that brick is hard fired, and I'm sure that the paint will come off fairly easy.
Yeah.
That's it for me.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, anything like that?
Great. Yeah, I think we have a lot of good information. I appreciate it. Sounds like we're very close here.
All right. And with that, staff recommends a motion to carry case H-23-0047 to the next regularly scheduled meeting of the HPC on June 17th.
Is that at the request of the applicant?
At the request of the applicant.
At the request of the applicant.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. The application has been carried. And why don't we go ahead and take a 5-minute break? It is 8:27. All right. Are we all back, ready, good to go?
Yep.
All right. Robert, if you want to call us
Yes.
back to order.
I will call the meeting back to order at 8:34.
Great. And the next item on the agenda.
Is review and recommendation of proposed amendments to the Luis Munoz Marin Boulevard, i.e. Henderson Street redevelopment plan. This is a recommendation to the Jersey City Planning Board. And before we jump into that, I know we do have a commissioner who's going to be recusing himself.
Yeah, so for this, I will be recusing myself. And so I'll come back later.
Thank you.
All right. So this is going to be a staff presentation. I will go ahead and put up these proposed amendments on everyone's screens. Okay, so. Great. So this redevelopment plan amendment mostly concerns block 1 of the embankment. So this is that first block between Marin and Manila. And if the commission will remember from our previous embankment redevelopment plan presentations, block 1 is the block that is proposed to be developed as part of any future work on this site, right? So we get blocks 4 through 6 as our public open space in exchange for block 1 being developed. We are going to be reviewing the historic preservation changes within this plan. There are other changes proposed, but they don't really concern this board. So I have up here just the preservation sections of this plan, right? So you can see there are, other sections, description, land use, whatever. But we're just going to go through the historic preservation requirements, and we're going to go through the amendments that are proposed here. For clarity's sake, the new language is in yellow, and any stricken language is crossed out. So there are no changes to the general requirements. As a reminder, the general requirements are pretty straightforward. It's just that they have to anyone who develops block 1 has to follow the Secretary of the Interior standards. They have to follow applicable National Park Service briefs, bulletins, and treatment of historic properties. Preservation briefs and bulletins, and the treatment of historic properties, and the historic design standards. That we are not going to sandblast, power wash, etc., any of these stones. And that prior to any work being completed, the developer of Block 1 does have to document Block 1 to HABS, HARE, and HALS Level 2 standards. We start to see some of the proposed amendments in the historic design standards for this section. The first one, this embankment stones, is replacing the word blocks there. That's just for consistency with the plan. The next change that we see is in C. This is echoed elsewhere in the plan, but it just says for any stone that is removed as a result of the development, that stone does have to be reused elsewhere on the 6 blocks. So when we develop those as park, maybe they'll become benches, maybe they'll become something else. We're not sure, but we do get the option to reuse those. And that any of those stones that are being removed have to be, that documentation has to be filed with us and SHPO prior to any work being undertaken, right? So we're not going to start removing blocks and then document things like that. Common sense, but we put it in the plan. The main bulk of the changes come in these two here when we're talking about the actual treatment of the stones. These changes, honestly, were things that we had assumed were going to happen, right? They are just being codified here. So in this case, when the developer started to flesh out some of their plans and for the tower, again, things that we understood to happen as staff, and I believe the commission understood, right, which is that some of the interior of some of these stones might need to be cut to accommodate construction. We're just writing into the plan that we understand that is going to happen, right? The embankment structure itself is, you have that outside wall that is straight, but the inside is actually built on a diagonal for structural purposes, right? So great when you're having structural purposes for drain lines, but not so great when you're driving pilings for buildings, right? So we understand that we are going to have to cut some of those stones on the inside. We're not cutting the ones on the outside to accommodate that construction. You'll see in section 2, because we know that depth is going to be altered, we have set a minimum depth that the stone shall not be either 12 inches or the average depth of the stone at the top of the wall, whichever is greater, right? So we're not going to see any of these stones being less than a foot deep. In reality, I think they're going to be deeper than that. We couldn't, in the time we had to complete this, we couldn't get someone up there to measure, so that's why we set that minimum, but I anticipate it's going to be greater. And then the last thing in that section is that again, things that we understood as staff, and I believe the commission understood to happen, but but just codifying them in the plan, is that them in the plan. A stone or two might need to be temporarily relocated to accommodate driving those piles for construction, right? Because if you have a wall that is losing some of its structural support, when you drive those piles or do some of that construction, we might need to temporarily remove those stones and put them back. Again, things we understood as the course of, like, these are things that just happened during the course of construction, just codifying it in the plan. And again, all of those stones and their locations will be documented prior to any work being undertaken at the site. The rest of the changes here are mostly just clarification. So you can see at F, we replaced the word podium with parking base. I don't know how it made it through so many revisions the first time. E and F are talking about the same thing, just talking about materials that are encouraged versus materials that are discouraged. And we called the parking base 2 different words. So just clarifying that there. And then in G and H, we changed language that said would to shall, just to make it a little bit stronger. Right. Are there any questions from the commissioners? Yeah, like we said, it's all pretty straightforward. And to be honest, I am happy to see this language clarified in the plan. I think it makes it a lot easier for us to review later down the line.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, do a roll call. Commissioner Cronin,
Aye.
Commissioner Amatuza,
Aye.
Commissioner Gunther,
Aye.
Commissioner Blazak.
Aye.
Okay. Commissioner Garriga is absent. Commissioner Sandcap is absent. Commissioner Sakong is recused. Vice Chairman Gucciardo is absent. And Chairman Gordon.
Aye.
Okay, there are 5 votes in favor, none against, with no abstentions. The amendments to the redevelopment plan are approved with a recommendation for approval to the planning board. Okay. We can go ahead and call our, oh wait, actually, I'm sitting here saying go ahead and call the next thing. But in reality, I get to talk more. Okay, that brings us to the end of new business.
And we're having Commissioner Sakong rejoin the fold.
Yes. For tabled cases, we have no update on this, but looking at what our June agenda just became, I would imagine that if they did want to reappear, we would not be seeing them until July. So no update so far there. All right, for demolition review, like I said, 11A, 17 Van Ripen has requested to carry to the June 17th meeting. So that leaves us with 37 Van Ripen, if you want to read what I just said into the record as chairman.
I will call 37 Van Ripen, the B24-111.
Okay. So this is a demolition review. Oh, where did that go?
Well, okay then.
But I was worried that Gerard was here to like argue to demolish this or something, and we were gonna have
No.
a fight on our hands.
No.
Yeah.
So why were they here for all this time?
Oh, there, Gerard, his firm represents the developer at Block 1 of the embankment, and Matt, who is here as well, is also a member of the development team. They were here just in case there were any questions on it from their perspective. Okay, well, why is this not going now? We never had this many tech issues on Zoom. Okay, so this is 37 Van Ripen. So we reviewed this proposed demolition. This building is within the Phase 1 Historic Site Survey, where they recognize it as having architectural significance. This building is also in the newly revised historic inventory of the Jersey City Master Plan. I can pull up here is a side view of it. You can see this directly abuts one of the new buildings on Homestead Place. And then if I pull up no, come on. They're all in the same place. All right. To touch anything on here. All right. The red triangle here is the location of this building. And then numbers 49 through 69 are within a preservation zone of the Journal Square 2060 plan and the Journal Square 2060 plan. And the gray roofed building directly below them is the Stanley Theater, just for location purposes. And then if I pull up an overhead oblique of this property as well, so this time it is the blue arrow. You can see that there's quite a bit of consistency within the row. Not necessarily all of the buildings between this and the preservation zone are architecturally of merit, but they are all constructed of a similar time period, as well as the ones across the street. And yeah, I do have up the determination where we did state that this has architectural significance, if any commissioners have any questions.
My only question is what is permitted here as per the redevelopment plan? What zone is this in?
4.
And that allows for what?
Off the top of my head, because there's one slightly down the street that is also in zone 4. I believe they're allowed like 4 or 5 stories. In the past, I've seen people combine zone 4 for different bonuses that allow them to go higher, like for example, that homestead bonus. But I don't believe that they're not allowed to go like super tall here or anything like that. Not to mention that even if they wanted to do something like that, they would need a combination of lots to create a larger lot size.
Maggie, I have a question.
Sure.
All of the buildings, the next 3 or 4 to the right are all boarded up.
Mm-hmm.
Have they been acquired by the same entity?
I do not know.
Okay.
My
I
understanding.
mean, I've sold 37 Van Ripen twice in my real estate career. It is a magnificent house. Inside, it's got dual staircases. It's got tons of space, a lot of original fabric.
Here,
It's always been a beauty, and it's always been well cared for.
Yeah,
So-
I will just state for the record, the level of care as of late on this building, I don't believe is as high as it has been in the past.
I could see that.
The boarding up.
Was
Yeah.
there a fire there?
Yes, there was a fire, but not enough to. My understanding is, I mean, like no one has submitted any paperwork to me that state that there's any structural instability in the building as a result of that fire, but there might be. Who knows? I do have up the tax card file. This photo here, where you can clearly see this. This is the what is it? The 1975. Where you can still see that architectural detailing up at the top. The 38 photo, admittedly, is not great. However, if I could rotate up at the top here. But you can still see its general form, right? You can just make out that curve up at the top there and that little guy over here. And you can see that the window fenestration is more or less the same. All right. Are there any other questions from any commissioners on this? If not, the recommendation is to, I forget how we did this last time. Motion to deny via a resolution? Is that how we did it last time?
I think we have this.
Jonathan, we have the discussion every time, and this is just one of those. I have many things in my brain that stay there for the rest of time. This is one of them that just refuses to stick.
We just need to give a report to
Okay.
the,
A resolution to authorize staff to provide a report to the zoning officer to recommend denial?
yeah, I think a resolution recommending denial would be sufficient, and then that resolution can be provided to the zoning officer.
Okay.
Because the important part is that the commission is making a recommendation to the zoning officer, and that within that resolution or that recommendation is showing that you have reviewed the application and specific reasons. In this case, Commissioner Amatuzzo's description of the historic resource that it provides is what the court is looking for.
And we could also say we just agree with the memorandum.
Yeah.
The determination.
I think it would probably be better to have specific reasons rather than just a pro forma, I agree with Maggie's memo, but both are defensible. Just to show that the commission has reviewed the application.
Okay.
Well, yeah, in this case, we had the benefit of a commissioner with personal familiarity with the property, but oftentimes we don't, and all we have to go on is the memo because they don't show up. But
And like a discussion of the pictures, and in this case, we talked about the building and what you can see and
And also that it's in the master plan and in the phase 1 survey. In the master plan or in the phase 1 and in the phase 1 survey. Okay, so staff recommends a motion to prepare a report for the zoning officer recommending the HPC's action to deny the application for demolition. Anyone want to say they make that motion and someone else
I'll
second?
make that motion. Do I
I'll
have to
second the
say it,
motion.
though?
No. That's why I said it.
No one was saying
And I'm going to write it down and I'm going to put it on a Post-it note and it's going to live in this binder and we'll never have this discussion again. Okay. That being said, I have a first, I have a second.
I second it, yeah.
Yes. All right. We'll do a roll call vote. Commissioner Amatuza,
Aye.
Commissioner Gunther,
Aye.
Commissioner Sakong,
Aye.
Commissioner Blazak,
Aye.
Commissioner Cronin.
Aye.
Okay. Commissioner Griega is absent. Commissioner Sandcamp is absent. Vice Chair Gucciardo is absent and Chairman Gordon.
aye.
Okay, there are 6 votes in favor, none against, no abstentions. The motion passes. All right, we have no resolutions to introduce or discuss, no resolutions to memorialize, no executive session, and that just leaves us with adjournment.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, who had the second there? Boston. Okay, it is 8:52. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.